was in the 6th grade, John Kennedy gave the inaugural address, and like many of you, I was inspired by it. Many years later, I went to work for Ted Sorensen, and Ted Sorensen was, I'd say, the principal author with President Kennedy of that speech. This is a copy that was given to the Library of Congress early in the 20th century. On this side here are the handwritten notes from President Kennedy of his inaugural address, and there's debate, as I'll go through, about whether Kennedy really wrote the address or Sorensen wrote it or how much each wrote of it, and I'll describe why I think there's a resolution to that. But Kennedy did have about 9 pages in his handwriting. The Kennedy Library in Boston has those, and these are blown up copies, and if you have a chance later to come up and look at it, you'll see the famous "ask not" sentence is in one of those pages. So Kennedy wanted to make it clear that although he was very young and not experienced as Eisenhower, he was not going to be somebody who was a pushover. Antithesis is when you say, you know, the opposite of something. You combine something like, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. That's called antithesis. There are 52 sentences in this speech. 22 of them use that device. Antithesis is a device where you can give very stark contrast. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Makes it clear what you think. It's very stark. It's a very good device. Sorensen would later say he never heard of the word antithesis, but actually there are 22 of the 52 sentences use that device. There's a sentence here that's called the master sentence. Churchill had a concept that when he wrote a speech, he would always have a master sentence, a sentence that would basically be the sentence that would be the key sentence. And Kennedy liked that concept, and they thought this would be the sentence. And so when it begins, "and so." When you begin something "and so," what you're really saying is everything before this is predicate. Everything I just said for, 10 minutes or so, that was just leading up to, and so, and here's my main point, and so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. My fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. My fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.